Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Mystery Red Reads. I am your host, Mystery Red, and this is my trigger warning. This story covers material that may be upsetting to some viewers and readers. This is my disclaimer. This beta read in Concord is at the author's request. This video is for learning purposes. Today we're looking at a memoir. We are looking at, I'm not really sure what chapter or what's going on. So, I'm working with No-Ant-5039 on their memoir, and I'm going to apologize up front because I'm going to warm up with this one. I have been gone for several days taking care of a sick child who has now rejoined the land of the living. Although she is already pleading for me to come get her from school and bring her home, but that's pretty typical of her anyway. So I think she's going to be all right. But so I have to kind of warm back up here, get back in my vibe. I was having a routine. It got disrupted. And now I'm kind of like pulling all my strings together and making my notes and trying to get reorganized. And I just really wanted to get in here and start reading for you guys again. So on that note, where we're at in Ant's memoir is they're kind of looking for things to add, and they're also doing some revisions and some reorganizing. So we're kind of in a little bit of a revision kind of zone. And so I'm just going to kind of read this and dive in and see what they've got for me as I try to get grounded into my readings for today. I'm going to try to do as many today as I possibly can. Hi, Mystery Red. This is unconventional. We'll see how it lands. Lots of insecurities about the idea. This would come after the letter to my husband. Go on, say it. As number 15, and a final chapter letter to myself will be 16. That said, here is a first draft. Okay. I'm going to check this note over to the side. This is to the reader, though I'm hoping that's implied, and I don't have to be so cheesy as to say, dear reader. Is it... I mean, maybe there's a clever way we could say the same, but I kind of like directly addressing the reader. Ooh, I gotta muse on that. Okay, and all right, we're gonna have a go at this, and we're gonna kind of try to remember to come back up here and look at this again and think about it for a second. I've been writing these letters. At times, the process has stung like lime juice on a cuticle cut. Sorry. There is nothing wrong with this visual. I am loving it. And I literally struggled over the second sentence because I was admiring the first one. Oh my gosh. Like my brain was just like, that is fantastic. So accurate, so real. So yes, 100%. And my brain just kind of stopped and was like, nice. Well done. I'm going to try it again without the admiration factor going on in my brain, where it was just like, I can't even. That was just great. All right, let's see. At times, the process has stung like lime juice on a cuticle cut. More often, it's like driving 42 miles per hour in a 35 zone when a 90s song comes on the radio. To my surprise, any given line jogs my memory, unraveling the words in sync. Okay, this is hilarious because like what you have in sync and my brain goes to in sync, like the band. Okay. I'm going to leave that. I'm just leaving the whole thing, whether you intended to do it or not. I'm just leaving it because it's working so well. And I'm a hand talker, so I'm waving my hand around, smacking things. It's fantastic. Okay. Focusing. In fact, shortly after my 4-year sobriety milestone, a Michael Franti song launched me back in the house up on the hill. Nostalgia stirred something deep within, prompting the first letter, addressed to myself. Lyrics boomed, urging me to recognize the resilience I fought so hard to reclaim. The truth moved my fingers across the screen, tapping out words to the beat in my notes app. I reimagined the afternoons when the sun poured through the bedroom doors, so bright we wore sunglasses inside. Paraphrasing from a Bukowski poem, we'd say we were living like millionaires, the ocean a blanket full of diamonds. To navigate the tumult of my wily, indulgent, romantic memories, I created an album titled Recovery on my phone. The photos capture moments from my life that ground me in reality, untouched by my mind's distortions. I'm going to pause to read over this. Should I tie in specific examples from the prologue and where mentioned in Chapter 3 and Chapter 11, or that felt too much like a summary, so keep it vague? Example, I could add this sentence here. Of course, there's me in that nightgown, the photo of my sliced up knee, and the picture where I look up at the windmill. Okay, I actually love that. In this chapter is coming like next to last. Is that correct, or this is the first? This is the final chapter. Lots of insecurities about this idea that this would come after the letter to my husband as number 15. So his is number 15, and then a final chapter letter to myself will be 16. I'm kind of feeling like this is it. This is 16. So because it seems like you're kind of, I feel like this is that one. So I love, and I've done this a couple times in my fiction writing, and it has gone off really, really well. People love it. When you have a history in your book and you go back and you kind of tie it in later on. So I have flashback scenes in some of my fan fictions because I have epic sagas with the characters, and probably close to 1 million words combined on these sagas, no joke. But don't think I did them all by myself. They're part of my round robin with my friends. But my point being, actually, the one that I did that has one of the flashbacks was not part of the round robin. It really was part of a separate trilogy. And actually, it's bigger than a trilogy. But anyway, point being, they had so many scenes that happened with these two characters throughout the story that I was able to, at a pinnacle moment in their pivotal moment in their lives later on, have a flashback scene to some of the events that happened from the beginning of their relationship to the middle to the, to where they were today. So, and people went nuts. They were like, I hope that someday, one of my favorite comments was, I hope that someday I get to do this, like that I get to write like this. So, and it felt really, really good. I really enjoyed it. And I do think it hits well if you do it right. So what I would suggest is go ahead and try to tuck it in there. Go ahead and work it in. I actually enjoyed reading it over here. So go ahead and tie it in. I almost wish it was already there so I could have felt the hit of it when I went with that first impression. Go ahead and put it in there. You're looking to gain some words. We can read it again after with it tucked in there and see how it goes. You can always take it back out if it's not working. So, and then you can also put it in there, bounce it off a couple of the other readers for their first impression and see what they kind of think. All right. And then now now that I've started reading into this, I think this might be fine, but I almost wish there was a clever way to address the reader, and almost witty, because some of your little titles, like The Aspiring Pilot, for example, were catchy. They were kind of a little sassy, unique, and I liked that, and I'd like to keep to that feel. So maybe muse about another way to approach the reader, but to approach them directly. But this does work if you can't think of one. I'm just thinking, what else do you think about your reader? What would you call your reader? And I think maybe I can't think of something because it's not my story. So there's that. Okay, let me get back into here. The photos capture moments from my life that ground me in reality, untouched by my mind's distortions. One image stands out. Connor's foam mats on the rooftop, the quilt bunched up among a down sleeping bag and pillows. Just under the rain gutter, thick fog blots out the hillside and ocean below. On the abandoned makeshift bed is a 750 milliliter bottle of Jameson, and next to it gummy candies, a tube of sunscreen, and 3 bottles of water for the insatiable thirst of... I chuckle that sunscreen I chuckled at the sunscreen bode's responsibility, only to remember we were drunk, high, and naked on a 2-story rooftop. This photo encapsulates a sadness. What was once romantic is now reckless, almost tragic. There was nothing safe about my emotional stability on that weekend. At the risk of being mistaken for a football fan, I picture the erratic bounce of a pigskin across the field. The way it veers unpredictably mirrors my riding journey. A memory hits the ground and spins, sometimes back toward me, other times careening in directions I never anticipated. As I replay each burst of chaos, I've contained the thoughts into sentences. This endeavor continues to reshape my revelations of love, growing up, and being human. In my first phone conversation with my now husband, he dove into an analogy likening love to a fire. Granted, I was on a second bottle of red wine, but his idea was that when the flames flicker out, perhaps it doesn't disappear entirely. Instead, love smolders, lingering beneath the surface, waiting for a spark to reignite. In this sense, love can transfer or shift, carrying embers of past experiences into future connections. Connor was high, inspiring his philosophy, but upon completing these epistles, I am inclined to agree with him. Love never truly extinguishes. My love has only gained momentum and value honed by every exchange. Chemistry is science, and the art of loving is a learned skill. This is optimistic because it means anyone can grow in their capacity and experience with love. Studying past relationships has given me insight into the nature of my own heart. I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, I'm going to muse out a couple of things. First, I actually paused so that I could look to see if embers had been used more than once. I don't think it was. I think it's fine. And then my next pickup was a couple of things that are small, but I'm going to observe them, if not just to satisfy my brain, as we all know how that works. So let's go over it really quickly, super, super mild. We have photo, and it popped up because we were talking about pictures, so it popped up more than one time. We have photos. I think it's here only the 2 times, and because of that, I think it's fine. Now, what I don't know, and I want to suggest if you wanted to swap it out, flip-flop one for pic or picture. I think picture fits your voice a little better, but I also don't know if we've already used picture and then we're just creating an echo on that. So, really quick, you could do a word search. Yep, there's picture here. So I think as long as there's space, I paused at that break, so we're going to go back down to it, but I wanted to observe these things up here because if I don't, then I'll either forget or it'll mess up the rest of my read if my brain gets hung up on it, so I have to observe it. All right, so photo, we have phone. Even if we don't do anything about it, I just have to process it. So I don't know if it pops up more than those 2 times. And you've got distance, a little bit, at least a paragraph between them. It's probably nothing, like it's probably not worth doing anything about. And then you don't want to turn around and create another echo by flip-flopping a word out. One thing you could do, if you wanted to, is, let's see where picture was. I had found picture. There it is. Okay, there's at least one picture. There may be more than one of the pictures. What you could do if you wanted was keep photo here and put picture up here. So that there's more space between between using them twice. There'd be a little bit more distance if you wanted to, so that they're not photo and then photo again. You could have photo, picture, photo. Or picture, photo, picture, whatever you wanted to just kind of get more space between them. If you wanted to do that, you could try reading them out loud the 2 different ways. If it bothers you, we're doing this mostly to humor my brain. So, and I'm not doing the actual word search to see if it pops up more than those 2 times. And we're also stopping up here. I've not even gone on yet. So there may be more. but I'm observing it now as I noticed it. And then the other thing is phone, and I don't know how many times phone pops up, but if it pops up more than once in a close proximity is when my brain tends to go to alert me, hey, at least point this out, mark it off, so that you have talked about it, pointed it out, and then we can move on. And it could be in there more. Those are the 2 times I noticed it, and I did not do a word search. Another benefit of me highlighting it is you could be like, okay, how many times did I use this? And then I can search for the alternate word and see how many times I used that and mark where it's at, so you can see if you need to split them up a little bit more. And so those are just observations. And we're going to keep going. Okay, we are down here at the break. All right. The street lamp spilled a warm glow onto the sidewalk, illuminating restless shadows between our home and the neighbors. The cold wind whipped through the apple tree, branches grazing the window with a subtle tap. I propped a second pillow against the wall, shifting upright, accepting that dozing back off was unrealistic. With my family asleep down the hall, my conscience dredged up thoughts of a former lover, an intrusion amongst other more invited memories. So began my letter to the aspiring pilot. The words poured out, revealing truths I hadn't faced. Like a mineral growing on a rock, my codependency stared me in the face. I have dedicated a lot of my healing energy to substances, and codependent dynamics often overlap. But detailing the history of my relationship with Evan took my understanding of my headspace to a whole new level. I was hurting nobody but myself when I bent over the tailgate in the dark almond orchard and inhaled that first line. Somewhere along the way, I conjured up the expectation that my love interest should be my be-all, end-all source of support. With this unrealistic and unfair pressure, I became too wrapped up in our love bubble, not wanting to be apart, and lacking trust that he could be without me. My reliance on him intertwined with my ability to connect with others, a pattern that certainly didn't start there. But through addressing him, I began to see how my dependency affected others beyond just our relationship. Thinking of Evan's parents left a lingering yuck, like the residue of a juice cup forgotten on the counter. They had hardwood floors, and his room was at the farthest corner of their house. Coming and going at all hours to smoke a cigarette, faltering in a belligerent stumble, I have no doubt we weren't as quiet as I imagined at the time. Evan's soft-spoken mom had several health problems, asthma and Crohn's if I remember correctly. She didn't like to drive and spent most days at home sleeping until noon. So many times she expressed interest in building a puzzle or playing a game with us. Yeah, right. I couldn't be bothered to stop drinking long enough to be enough to connect. This is the opposite of how I want to be today. But perhaps what is most painful to behold, reflecting on that letter, is how far gone I was, even then. Another 2 years elapsed since the night I hurled the rock through my own car window to my last sip of alcohol. The third letter flowed just as organically as the first 2. As a nothing to anyone in the light of day, I've grieved my fisherman friend's overdose in secret. When I first found out he died on social media some 3 or 4 months after it happened, I craved more information. His vice was, no one really accidentally overdoses on... Had he switched gears to... No way! Sure, I knew about... But my ex had pain patches, and I think they even gave me some during childbirth. But I was clueless as to how I morphed into the cheap and prevalent rush that steals center stage today. I got out of the scene just in time. To be clear, meth can kill. Oops. But most of the 50 deaths a day involve polydrug use. On the other hand, is responsible for 200 deaths a day in America. Logically knowing the specifics wouldn't change his fate. I grappled to make sense of this loss. The letter achieved that for me. We'd had some dramatic goodbyes, but his death was his most confusing exit yet. During my weekly Friday call with Janice, I read my first 3 letters. She joked, saying I should anonymously publish them as a compilation of love letters to myself. Her voice softened when she related to my words, and I could hear the quiet pause before she spoke as if holding back a lump in her throat. The encouragement has given me the confidence to keep finding my voice, to put words to the emotions I once drowned out with alcohol. With this far-fetched idea in my mind, I drafted the 4th letter, Mr. Tinder, my best high. No high was ever as satisfying as my first. It was a hellish grief I couldn't get there again. This enhanced my awareness of addiction. The pursuit of something so unobtainable is a form of insanity. Chasing it through bathroom stalls, cheap motels, strangers, and exchanges, there's this mind sickness that would wash over me, having been awake some 40 hours. Could I hate myself anymore? I'm wondering why this is in italics. Like, I get it's a style choice, but I'm contemplating why. I don't know if it needs to be. I feel like it would have read just fine. I mean, it reads fine anyway, but I feel like I actually noticed it and I couldn't figure out why it was like that. Except that you might be trying to put emphasis on certain phrases. And so I'm looking back kind of at your pattern. Are these references back to other parts of the letter is kind of what I'm getting. Other parts of the other letters. But, and these are like a summary, like you're wrapping it up. You're tying back to all of them. I noticed it and I kind of mused over why. My first thought was that you were referencing back to the other letters, and I kind of think you are, but I don't know if you, I don't know. Maybe. I'm observing it. I don't know why. I think it's fine. Maybe previously it's been subtle whenever we use them, and this is the most you've used them, so I'm just noticing them. But I think it's okay. We're going to tell my brain to put that on hold, and we're going to keep going. Because it is reading really well, by the way. Okay. My letter reflecting on the night Josh came in pieces. Addressed to Dealer Derek, it intertwined a storm of emotions, processing first the violation of assault, and second, the shame I took on by hurting Evan. The cryptic first two drafts were a mess. My brain is stopping and thinking. I don't know what it's thinking yet, but it's like, it's trying to tell me something and I don't know what it is yet. So we're going to keep going. There's nothing wrong. I'm reading it. It's beautiful. It's not beautiful what happens in this paragraph. I'm just saying it's reading well. The whole chapter is reading well. So, I'm questioning my own brain at this time. It could be nothing, but it's not actually telling me what. It's just kind of, I don't know what it's doing. There's something going on in my head and I don't know what it is yet. So we're going to keep going. Let's see. I don't want it to mess me up when I'm reading. That's why. So I kind of start to stammer. I'm like, okay, what is it doing? What is it trying to tell me? What does it mean? Is it anything at all? And because there's like there's me arguing with myself in my head. And at this point, I don't even know what it's over, and it's annoying me. So I don't know what I'm doing. I need to stop. Okay. I'm actually going to go back up here and start trying to read through and see if it'll let me without flagging. I think it might be reminding. Okay, so when I'm reading this, I'm remembering the letter where we wrote about this incident. And then I'm questioning the italics because this is a reference back to what specifically happened in that letter. So why the italics on this if it also is? Okay, verbal musing. I'm not sure what your thought process, your choice is on what you italicize and what you don't. And unless it's just to put emphasis on that specific part. That's okay. So I'm not really sure when we're choosing to use the style. And so when I went to read this, I'm like, okay, this is a direct reference to something that happened in one of the other letters as well, as kind of this whole entire thing is tying back to each letter. Okay. I think you get the point of what my brain is trying to ask me is what is the thought process in the and what we italicize and what we don't. Okay. All right, now I'm going to try to read from here and go on. My letter reflecting on the night Josh came in pieces. Addressed to Dealer Derek, it intertwined a storm of emotions, processing first the violation of assault, and second, the shame I took on by hurting Evan. The cryptic first two drafts were a mess. Something twisted in my chest when my words missed their mark with readers. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. The quiet space around me swelled with the urge to explain, to justify. A weight settled in my gut, and I found an important piece of my passion for this project. My story. My voice. The accuracy of how the reader understands the events as I experience them matters. My story matters. This revelation has been transformative, not in a way that feeds self-importance, but in the quiet victory of reclaiming the space I used to shrink from. I once apologized for my very existence, feeling broken, worthless, a burden. Now I stand empowered, loving myself and owning my story. For this I am grateful, and more articulate. A rock bottom and a rock through my window, and me again, Mr. Tender, came next. These led to a plateau of stagnant weeks and insecurities. I had submitted some chapters on a critiquing forum, and if I got any feedback at all, it made me question my sanity. Letters don't have dialogue, and certainly not dinkus. Reading this is like snooping in a diary. Your writing is purple and nothing happens. What's the point? This to the girl who snorted to spite my addict boyfriend. The "I'll show you" pulsed deep inside me, and I typed sentences around any spot in question. Okay, I'm going to pause. Reader musing. What? Okay, I know one of the forums that you were using, because I also have used it, and it's like the world of beta reading is kind of this treacherous space, and people will hold me to the fire for this because they're infuriated at my method. Okay, they're like, I mean, aggressively coming for me, like I'm committing a crime in what I'm doing for you guys. And the thing is, getting critiqued hurts a little bit. It stings. But at the same time, if you've got in your mind, I want help, I want to grow, I want to learn, I want more for my writing, and maybe that this other person who's reading my work can answer my questions. They can tell me, did I hit my mark? Did my joke land? Did you get choked up in the spot I intended to? What did I make you feel? Is the story working? Is there a plot hole? Is something unreasonable? Is the sentence not reading well? There's so many questions. And a lot of times when we go into these forums, people have to, I know the one she's using, and there's nothing wrong with it. I actually have used it and I kind of liked it. But, oh no, my printer's going to go off now. Hang on. Okay. So in order to get credits in this other forum, I don't know if it's been years since I used it, but when I used it, you had to have credits. So you had to go do reads for other people, and each read was worth so much credit, and you accumulate your credits and then submit your work to be read. And you fall into a kind of, I feel like it's like a queue. It's been a while. Anyhow, the system works. All right. The problem is, a lot of times when I read notes from other betas, it'll be very generic. And honestly, some of the things that they comment on don't make sense to me at all. I'm like, that is like not even helpful. It's not even relevant. I don't even understand. I feel like you're being petty or whatever. And it's not even just directed to me, like when I'm reading crits for other people. So we're at the mercy of whether or not a person is doing a read just so they can earn a credit, and how much effort they actually put into it. The other side of a beta read is a person will start to read for you, and then you're reading for them in exchange, and maybe you are more committed and you finish first. Okay. And then if you happen to finish first, and I'm talking like finish reading and for a manuscript, like for the whole manuscript or even a whole chapter for chapter, all of a sudden, they disappear. Because I've had a couple of them just disappear. They got what they wanted out of me, and then they were gone, and they didn't finish their duty to me. So people rave about the tried and the true, and you kind of have to have it. It's one of those, you have to have beta reads. You need it. But at the same time, there's a little bit of you get what you came for, but then how much are you giving out and how relevant is it? And then there's also some of the advice that you're not going to agree with all of it. And then sometimes you get diamonds in the rough. You come across a treasure. Either someone's a really good reader, very experienced and doing a fantastic job, and really gives you great advice that changes your writing forever, or you get some and you learn a little something from each person. So there's those little morsels of goodness that you do get out of it, but it's hit or miss in a lot of times. So if you do find yourself in a good little cluster, be really, really happy and excited for you, because that's a wonderful, wonderful, rare thing in my opinion and in my experience. Usually, when you're paying someone to do a read, you get a pretty good read because you're getting your money's, that you've paid them. But then there's the scams that are out there too. So it's a treacherous place to be, and the writing market is so super competitive. But I mean, some of this is letters. Letters don't have dialogue, and certainly not dinkus. Reading this is like snooping in a diary. Your writing is purple and nothing happens. What's up? What kind of comments are these? What? I don't understand why someone can read for someone else and it has to be snarky, or it has to be curt and almost rude and not helpful. And that's probably why when people hear what I'm doing, they balk at it. Oh, you're humiliating people publicly for your own gain. No, that's your mindset. That's your thought process. That's what you haven't even listened to me at all. And you have no idea. You've just already decided what I'm doing for me. No, I had this idea that you cannot replicate a first impression. I can't. Even when I go back and I read a revision, I can kind of pick up on some of the things. And if there's been enough time between me reading chapters, because my memory is not great, it'll be like a fresh read for me, and I'll remember certain key points that have not changed. But you just can't replicate that first impression and how smoothly it goes for you. And that's what started with this idea for me to do what I'm doing. But this is hurtful. This is not helpful. Reading this is like snooping in a diary. What? Okay, is a memoir not always a peek inside someone's life? That's kind of private and intimate, and in a very, and to some extent it is that. It is like reading a diary. But you have given your consent to this happening. There's a difference. Snooping would be without consent, wouldn't it? Okay, so I'm like offended for these comments. These are terrible. Letters don't have dialogue, and certainly not dinkas. What? None of this is helpful. Your writing is purple and nothing happens. Okay, so somebody doesn't appreciate what? I'm sorry, so much happened in this memoir. I've got like 5 different things rolling through my head right now that happened in this memoir, and I happen to like colorful writing with texture and depth and emotion and just all of those things. Just no. Just, you know what? Just no. No. Okay? Here's the thing. I'm on a rant because I'm like angry. I am. I'm frustrated. When we read for someone else, can we not be kind when we do it? Why do we have to be hurtful? Why does it have to be that way? It's already hard enough hearing a crit. You don't need to feel attacked at the same time from someone who's supposed to be helping you. And how is it helpful if you don't offer a suggestion? And to be kind. When I say thank you for trusting me with your words, this is why, okay? Because it's hard and you're really, really brave. All right. So I'm going to stop my anger and we're going to carry on. Okay. I'm going to be okay. I'm okay. We're going to keep going. I'm going to protect you guys. Okay. I hope I'm kind to you all when I read for you. All right. It can be really, the other thing is I always try to sit on a crit. So, when I get a crit, I will try to read it, sit with it, and and trying to gain perspective. It's the same way when I get a review on my writing. I sit with it. I left a bad. I've had honestly, I've had one. I think one truly bad review, like really bad review on one of my fanfics, and I left it there. My first inclination was to delete it because it was hurtful, and it really came. They really came for me. But the second thing was I had to sit with it, and I was like, I feel like I need to not just keep the good. I need to keep the good and the bad because it's fair. And then I had to think bit by bit about the review. Was it true? No, not exactly. I because one of the I was accused of doing a self-insert into a story, and I was like, not exactly. They they even thought that they even said to me that my characters, they thought my name was probably the character's name. And I was like, no, not exactly that either. I had actually based the character, the original character that I was writing, on a character from another show. So I had created a character based on that. But they really came for me. There was parts that were not true. And at the end of this really long rant that this person wrote to me, I was like, why did they keep reading it? Like, this person read, I think they read the whole thing and then went on a tangent at the end of it. And I was like, why did you put yourself through that? Okay. If you start reading something and it's not for you, just politely say, I just don't think this is for me. And if you're so kind as to point someone to someone who might be able to better help them, okay. Crits don't always have to be bad. And sometimes the truth does hurt. Because now I got a paid professional crit on my my original fiction. And she was fair. And it was hard. And honestly, my book is stunted because she was fair and right. And it was hard. And so I'm actually gone back in, removing two characters' points of view, adding an entire point of view of another character, and eliminating an entire chapter. And it's a lot of work. But I think that it'll be a more marketable book for it. Do I think that it's as close to the ugly, twisted thing that it was before? And I mean ugly like I wrote it, deliberately showing ugly parts and very, very dark. And it's watered down. I mean, it's better writing. It is better marketable writing, but it's also watered down. Okay. I'm going to refocus. I'm going to add one last thing that goes to what is your goal. If your goal is to be published and you have reached a beta higher than me, okay? Because I'm not any kind of professional grade grammar, diligent. I'm giving you a read, and I'm giving you insight from my musings, my little empath brain, and my neurodivergency, okay? So I'm just kind of giving you that experience and those kind of musings. You probably should get another read, and this is to everybody, from someone who is like successfully published if possible, or even someone who might be getting paid. Like I paid a couple $100 for this person to read my entire manuscript, and they provided me with an entire report, and they offered suggestions, and they did a great job. I did not have the money for her to go chapter by chapter with me because she was willing to do that, but I just didn't have the funds for that. And so I also needed to put the book down and to marinate on the advice for a while, keeping in mind that what are your goals? What do you want for your piece? What do you want to get out of your piece? Did you write this to heal for yourself? Because you do what you want with it up to that point. But when you write for marketing, and they're going to help you to make your piece into something marketable. And I am not there. That is not what I do. So I can tell you what I do know, and from what experience I have, and from my talent for writing. Okay. All right, we're going to get in here. Perhaps of more interest than the letters I've written are the ones I haven't. While I mentioned my divorce, I never felt compelled to write a letter to my ex-husband. Not for a lack of a story. More, our relationship was toxic. He was addicted to pain meds. In the end, he beat me. The second time it happened, I left. After almost 7 years, I ran down the steps with a duffel bag and never saw him again. To some degree, in composing these chapters, I have focused the lens on my own behavior. This wasn't a smear campaign to hide under what they did, but an opportunity for me to examine what I've done. What have I always done? Who am I? And what motivates me? In the case of my ex-husband, I still find it hard to flesh out my role and confront the hatred. Sure, he was a calculating scumbag, but who am I really struggling to forgive? Him or the version of myself that married him, knowing he was unemployed after his second DUI? I'm no longer naive enough to ignore that his absence in the memoir shows. I still have some work to do in my healing journey. But quite unexpectedly, the work I've done to forgive my mom and understand our past has eased much of the pain and shame of falling for him and staying in the first place. Okay, huge reader musing. I can relate. So when I'm reading this and you talk about how you did not talk about your ex-husband, I'm thinking, are you at peace with that part without needing the healing and the examining? Because and then you mention, and as I'm thinking that, you're mentioning your mom and how you're getting more out of that. You're getting a lot of healing out of examining that relationship. And that goes, and how one relationship the pain of one relationship kind of set you up for the pain of the one that followed it. Okay. Does that make sense? That's kind of my reader musing, my thought on that. Because I kind of see, when you look back and you get perspective, I think first, would I need to write a letter about something that I don't have all these feelings about? Okay. It doesn't, when you think of it, do you feel something, and where do you feel it? Okay. Do you feel it in your chest? Do you feel it in your stomach? Does it bring up, what sensation does it bring up in your body when you think about that memory? If you don't feel anything, either there's a lot of work to be done, or you're just over it and you don't really need to look back at it, and you're at peace with it. Okay. So you have to ask yourself that. So asking yourself those two questions, because there are parts of my life, like part of what I write about in my original fiction, I can talk easily about it. Very rarely does it still stir up major emotions in me. Generally, I'm fine. Like, I can talk a lot about it. It makes other people uncomfortable. But I think that it's a good thing. I feel like it's a sign of healing. And I feel like we need to talk more about these things openly and comfortably if we can, because that's healing, is it not? And then if we help someone else, that's even more cathartic. So when I read this, and kind of when I think about your ex-husband, I was kind of thinking the same thing. Like, well, she must be okay with like, she doesn't need to revisit that's not where her pain lies. Your mind went to all these pieces, where your pain was and where your healing needed to take place, and maybe you got further on and you're like, I don't actually need to look this hard at that, because when I look further back at this, I feel more. And when I do the work there, I understand what happened after it. So part of it is like, if you've already made peace with it, do you need to examine it? It's just interesting. And it could be the opposite. It could be that you need to dig deeper there and ask questions of yourself. But I'm inclined to think that it's the latter. Okay. Oh, my mom. In spring of 2023, I had to have my gallbladder removed. Doctors said I couldn't lift more than 10 pounds for the first 5 weeks. Despite everything, there was no one I wanted more than my mom to pick me up and drive me home from the surgery center. In truth, I was terrified how I would behave coming off of anesthesia, and if I unleashed my wrath on anyone, I felt safest to do so with her. She stayed 10 days and didn't drink the entire time. Ava couldn't pronounce her G, and I loved hearing her say Nanma. Sometimes I can't believe my mom is the same mom I grew up with. Writing her letter shed layers of hurt, replacing them with compassion. With all the ways she hated herself, she just didn't have any love to give. Oh my gosh, so relatable. So many feelings, so relatable. All of this, like I've got feelings right now from right here. You were like, I feel safest to unleash on my mom, because you know that sadly, I feel like my mom loved me within the best of her personal ability. And it kind of goes back to the same exact thing you said here. They only have what they have, and they only have what they're capable of, and they do what they're capable of. And the thing is, they showed up and they did what they were capable of. It's not always pretty. It's complicated. And I think that is part of being human. And it's just so real and so true and so raw. And our mothers, for all their faults, we have to wonder, how are we? I'm always wanting to hope that I do the things that I for my children that my mom wasn't able to do for me. And I think maybe that was her goal too. And so we do continue to improve when you look at it that way. But I like that she came and she didn't drink the entire time so was she sober for your daughter? Because that's, even if she wasn't sober for you, maybe at that point of her life, she couldn't be because she had her own trauma to deal with. And that's the other thing. We have to deal with our trauma. Look at how much better we are for dealing with our trauma. Oh, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Loving it. Okay. Gotta focus. How natural that I sought out to find it in other relationships. Wrangling my past romances into words shows how love, like memory, changes. There was love all along, even if it was flawed. All the things I just said summarized. Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. Now, my love is less spontaneous. It thrives quiet and slow, heavy from the weight of everything I've been through. Whether in my first marriage, smoking with Evan, or isolating above the clouds with Mr. Tinder, it's all shaped me. The point isn't to outrun or distance myself from my past, but instead to find the parts worth carrying forward and learn how to integrate the painful pieces into something beautiful today. I'm going to pause. When I read this line, you have a comma there to separate it, your first marriage. And then what you did with Evan is separate. Okay, so the comma tells me it's separate, but at the same time, my brain's first inclination was to link this with this, even though I know that's not right. Okay, I'm just letting you know what my brain went to and why it went to it, because I think if you read it without that precious comma there, it would read as though this happened with him. Anyhow, that's an observation that my brain did process while I was reading. Sifting through the remnants of my personal history, I realized that the letters, both written and unwritten, every experience forms a complete essence of the woman I have become. Dismantling my regrets and shame and sitting in my truth despite the tightness at my sternum has gone from being uncomfortable to becoming a source of pride. Surrounded by gentle support, I have learned to embrace the most cringeworthy moments as vital in knowing, trusting, and most of all, loving myself today. As I move forward in my journey, I am aware that my past is amongst my biggest assets. To know yourself so well. The first thought will always be the same, but softened by love and compassion, I now know I don't have to react on it. I can survive in my skin and in my head until the second or third thoughts unfold. These letters are so much more than reflections of my past. They are a roadmap to navigate my future. My daughter inherited my messy hair and thirsty heart. She greets the day with me. Her curiosity and urgency rein me in from my nostalgia to participate in the here and now. Oh, mine does too. So that's actually part of the reason I've been gone for several days is because she constantly needs me. So, and I love that. I'll never complain about it. I love every minute with both my children. Okay. But the boy will try to just hole up, fix it himself, or just ignore it and hope it goes away. And I have to kind of watch for that. But the girl will call on me. Okay. This is where I live now, in motherhood, in recovery, in humanity, and in my own skin. This is where I love now. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, Mystery Red, here's the big beta questions for you. Oh my goodness. Do you ever find yourself wondering what this would look like as a narrative? Or feel very literal about letters looking a certain way that mine's just too unbelievable? Do you mean feel like the formality of a letter? Okay. Do you ever find yourself wondering what this would look like as a narrative? Okay, so I feel like this is an opinion question. It's also kind of like a style question. I think that I would defer it to someone who is more into marketing a memoir, or who has a published memoir, or someone who betas for memoirs specifically. What is the best format for your memoir? Um, and I would defer to someone with more experience, specifically with memoirs. Do I find myself wondering what it looked like as a narrative? I feel like you have the potential to go either way with it. I accept what I was the format I was given. Does that make sense? I'm not questioning your format when I'm reading for you. What I'm doing is looking for, is it read smoothly? Where did I catch on it? Why did I catch on it? It's a what are my thoughts as I'm reading? Those are kind of more the things that I'm good at, and giving suggestions on where you can get most emotional punch, okay, where you can get the most emotional impact, and where you might be able to tuck more texture into something, but you do it so beautifully you don't need that. But those are kind of what I do. So as far as your actual format, I've formatted for industry standards for fiction. Although sometimes when you're querying, they will have specific formatting requirements as well. Okay, and they'll tell you this is what I want to see in the format, or you just follow the industry standard if they don't otherwise specify, um, and you alter your document to fit that. Okay, and I got that from a book. So I pulled that from a book, and then it held pretty true. So that was good news for me. And literally, I feel like I had a couple books, two or three of them that I used, and I feel like one of them was like writing for dummies or something like that. I mean, really very generic, but at the same time, the whatever they had in them held up for me. So that was good. They were good resources, because when I did go to query, they were truthful. I'm going to defer that question to someone with more experience with memoirs. I think that with your voice, you could easily do what you've already done, or yes, you could write it as a narrative as well. Like, I remember asking you before, and I don't think you ever answered, have you ever written any fiction? Because you've got a fantastic voice. Like, it's beautiful. You've definitely got the gift. And so I'd write fiction with you, honestly, if you've ever done it before. I don't know if you ever have, or if you have an interest in it, but if you finish this journey and you want to keep writing, I think you have an excellent voice for fiction. Do I feel very literal about letters looking a certain way that mine's just too unbelievable? No, it does read like a diary. Like, that person said that it read like you were snooping in a diary, but I don't think it's snooping. I'm offended by the comment of snooping. I do feel like it does read like I'm looking into a diary. Um, I feel immersed in it when I'm reading, because your visuals and your voice and your feelings, and just you have all the things, okay? And it does read like a piece of fiction, which it from what I read, it should, okay? So from what I read about memoirs, and it should feel like fiction, okay? So I'm not hung up on that. Again, I feel like you need to find at least, I'm going to say three, because I always recommend, with beta reading, I'd want an odd number of readers, because I'm going to go with, if two out of the three tell me the same exact thing, then they're probably right. Because otherwise, if you have people's, basically your beta readers are giving you their opinion, okay? So you either need the opinion of someone you trust, or you need three multiple opinions, so that you can go with the majority. All right, if more than one is saying the same thing to you, it probably holds true. That's kind of a good rule of thumb. And then listen to your gut on it. Okay, what is your intuition telling you to do? Sit with it and ask that. What do you feel inclined to do? Do you feel a strong sensation when you're trying to decide these things, one toward the other? And if you're truly wanting to know, copy the whole manuscript and go for it. Okay, just copy it and then do a little save as and go after it, and then look at the two different versions and which one do you love more. Okay, that's always an option, because I don't feel like you're having to do a whole lot of reworking to grab that narrative version of this. I think you're mostly losing your formatting. And the formatting was not a distraction for me. I was very clear, very grounded, and I was on the journey. All right. So, but I'm also not a specialist in memoirs. So we're keep going. There are seemingly pros and cons to the different formats. I get in my head about feedback wanting to see these as a narrative. Have you had more than one person say that to you, that they feel like it should be a narrative? I kind of already feel like it reads very closely to a narrative without the formality of the addressing letter. But I kind of like that. Maybe some people feel like the diary version or the letter version is overdone, but it's also I feel like it's pretty standard. I'm not really sure. I'm just not a memoir specialist, so it's really hard for me to answer some of those. Are the beta readers that are telling you this, do they specialize in memoirs? Do they have a published memoir, or have they written more than one memoir, or written a memoir and are very familiar with the industry standard for them? Also, have you looked into, you're not ready to query, but have you looked at agents or submitting manuscripts for memoirs and looked at what they're asking for, what the formatting is they're requiring, and telling you what they don't want? Because when I started reading into agents, I was looking more for an agent, and then rather than trying to go directly to a publisher, and most of them required an agent anyway. So when I looked at the agents that I wanted to query with, I literally was reading what they want and what they don't want. And so it kind of also can help you answer some of these questions. And then it'll be coming directly from the party who you would be trying to approach in the first place. So that might help as well in making this decision. So much so I tried it. Okay, so you did. All right, I've converted the Evans story into a chapter to see an alternative example. You do a great job of correctly interpreting my poetic cryptic intentions, and I feel like you honor the expression. I don't want to let other people who don't connect with the story in a similar way get in my head. That said, I am curious if you think and if you find merit to the idea of a narrative. Okay, so basically I'm using all these things in advance before you even ask me the questions. Depending on your answer below is a video to aspiring pilot as a narrative. But if you think letters, then don't even bother skimming the draft below. Okay. All right, so you know what we're going to do? I'm going to go and I'm going to make another video for you, and I'm going to read it as a narrative, and we can compare the two. And shoot, we have viewers. I mean, there's people out there that are listening to these videos, I think. They can always comment which one they liked better. And what I'll do is I'll put a link to the original reading of the Dear Evan letter, the aspiring pilot letter, and then they can listen to that, and then they can listen to it as a narrative. Now, I don't know how much comment we'll get back, because a lot of times people don't respond. I mean, they don't even like their own videos. So I don't expect a response, but there's a chance some people could muse over it. Or in the writing forum, they could give their opinion. I know that there's other authors like P and Crystal Committee, I feel like, or that are in the little writing group that you guys are in, and you can listen to them, and they could answer for you and give their vote. You could take a vote. I feel like you have a very narrative voice anyway. So you've already kind of had my musings before I even read all of your questions. But I'm going to go and I'm going to make the other one and then kind of tell you what I think after I read it. Like I said, I took the formatting for what it was. I felt grounded. I knew where I was going. I'm a person who likes all the feels. So again, you have to think about who is it that is reading for you and what do they like. I like all the things, okay? I like feelings. I like beautiful characters and I like a good story. It doesn't have to be for me a specific genre. There is very little that I will not love, and there is also a balance, a finesse to writing, and you've got it already. So there's at some point you can be like, what can I actually do for you beside from that reader impression? Um, but yeah, okay, all the things. All right, all the things. The only way we're gonna know is if you just to get to quench our curiosity, we're going to do the video, okay? And then we'll muse some more after that. All right, I'm gonna go now, guys, and I'm going to do this read for aspiring pilot. I think it's our first letter, right? It's our first letter. I feel like it was our first letter. And we're going to do a video on it, and I'll share a link to the original one. You guys can listen to them both and then compare them, and we'll have a little dialogue. All right. See you guys next time on Mystery Red Reads.